Good morning, everybody. This is Danny from Deep South Homestead. We're back out on the property today, guys. Yes, this was probably our coldest morning we've had in quite some time. We were at like 39 degrees this morning, which with the wind blowing, it was pretty chilly. I figured that was a good time for me to come do some work on the property. We're actually clearing off a new place here for another project that we have going on. And there was this old fat pine lighter stump was in the way here, and I knew it didn't have any surface roots, so I said, well, maybe I can pull it up like a tooth. All that was sticking out of the ground on this stump was that amount right there. But I knew it was laddered because when I bumped it with a tractor, I could smell it. But then that whole 6-foot piece here, actually it's over 6 foot, it's a little bit longer.
Looks like you pulled a tooth.
That's just, well, that's the way fat pine lighter is. There's no roots, it's just got a tap root. That's a pine for you. I hooked my bucket under it on my tractor, and the thing just popped right up out of the ground. And when it did, there was a artifact laying right beside it that we find on the property quite frequently here, and that was a perfect, literally perfect arrowhead from the Native Americans that lived here, the Houma Indians. And it's amazing how memories begin to rush back to you whenever I found this. It's not uncommon here to find them. We've never really looked up on this part of our property up here. We've always looked down lower down here. But as a child growing up, when I was about 10 to 11 years old, I did a lot of hunting. And my parents bought me these pump-up BB guns and pump-up pellet guns and stuff like that. And the property that my father had bought at the time when I was a small child just happened to have lots and lots of arrowheads on the property. When the ground would be plowed and then it would rain, there would be lots of arrowheads in the fields and where fire ditches around the edge of the property, stuff like this. And as a kid, I would gather those up, and I had a whole pile of them. And a gentleman one day when I was in town, we was at a grocery store or a little snack stop, whatever you want to call it, a little gas station place. He heard me talking about I had all these arrowheads, and he offered to give me $2 a piece for these arrowheads. Now this was back in the 60s. And oh my word, I thought I would get rich. Because I was always having to bum money off of my mom and dad to get me a pack of BBs or to get me some 177 caliber pellets, because I hunted for squirrels and rabbits and all this kind of stuff, quail. And I told my mama and daddy, I said, I'm going to start selling my arrowheads. So I called a gentleman up, and he came out and looked at what I had, and he bought every one that I was willing to sell at the time for $2 a piece. And I was able to take that money and go and buy the BBs and the pellets that I needed to continue my hunting endeavor as a young child growing up. Now later my dad would buy me a .22, and then later he would buy me a shotgun. And by the time I was 14, I had my own shotgun, and I was hunting in the woods by myself, you know, keeping the family supplied with wild game and stuff like that. But when I left there as a child, we moved to another place. My dad just didn't want to live there anymore. Too many kids in the neighborhood. So he moved us out to a more rural area. Never was any artifacts on that property at all. And then after I got married and later on, I moved and bought this property here. And one day I began to find artifacts here. And as I talked to some of the older people in the area, they told me, said, oh yeah, I said, you can go back in the woods back here. Said there, all these old road beds and stuff. He said they're all over the place everywhere. So over the years, I've just rambled around all these thousands of acres in here, gathering up artifacts. I have pottery, I have old knives, skinning tools, tons of broadheads, arrowheads, and lots of different stuff. And when Wanda and I got married, Wanda loves to do genealogy. And genealogy is just something that my family never talked about. My dad didn't really care where he came from because they were so poor. So I listened as Wanda done the genealogy on me, and she pulled up everything and she said, "Did you know that you have a Native American background?" I said, "Yeah, I knew that because of some of my family." I said, "I don't know anything about them, but I know that I have that in me." And she began to check, and she found out that my original family member that came to this part of the country was from King Mountain up in South Carolina, or North Carolina. It's right on the North Carolina-South Carolina border right there. It's a place called King Mountain. My ancestors moved from there down into this region down here, and they married the princess of the Houma Indians down here. And so therefore my family line got tied in with the Houma Indians here. The Houma Indians originally lived on this property right here where I'm sitting at. This was part of their area. If you pull up Stone County history, this is part of the area that they roamed and lived in here. Now the Houma Indians were part of the Cherokee Nation at that time, and one of my great-great-great-great-grandmothers was a Cherokee. So I got a little bit of Cherokee and I got a little bit of Houma from both sides in, and for me to be able to sit here on the property that I'm on and know that it is actually the property that my ancestors lived and hunted on, then to me that's very special. I've tried to leave this place many times in my life and God would never permit it. And I guess I'm coming to the realization that this is my place to be, where my ancestors originally was. And when I find something like this beautiful arrowhead right here that's actually perfect, it just lets me know that I have part of my family back. These will never be sold. These are family heirlooms as far as I'm concerned. And it's just very special to me. And I see Wanda's walking around in the background here looking, and she's picking up
Chips.
Big chips where they flaked them off of the arrowheads as they made them.
Behind the cabin.
And it's right beside the cabin right here. Many times we'll find a pile of ash where the ground's been burnt before, and out around that we'll find lots of chips and stuff like that. And the old man that used to live next to me here, now he would make a Native American ashamed of himself when it come to making an arrowhead, because this guy was really good. He always told me, he said, when you find them burnt spots, he said, pick up a rock in your hand and just pitch it. He said, wherever that rock lands, he said, measure that circumference around that fire. He said, and start looking. He said, because when they screwed up an arrowhead they were making and it broke, or it wasn't what they wanted, he said they would just throw it. And he said, I've learned, I find a lot of arrowheads when I do that. And I've tried that, and it seems like it does work a little bit. But you know, sometimes our history is there if we just take time and look for it. If Wanda had never went and done my genealogy on me, I would have never known that this was my ancestors' stomping grounds, let's call it. And I would have not known that. And these arrowheads would have just been another arrowhead to me. But now, these arrowheads mean something to me. The pottery that I have means something to me. All the tools I found, they mean something to me now, because I'm holding something that my ancient ancestors once held in their hands. So guys, take time and just sometimes it just helps to do your genealogy and see where you're from, or find out who you really are, because many people in the world today don't even know who they are or where they come from. They just have stories of their family, and which is great, but do the checking and see where you come from. See who your ancestors were. And if you are of a Native American background and your ancestry says you were from such and such an area, go there. Check it out. It might be somewhere that you want to be for the rest of your life. You never know. I never thought that I would be stuck right here where I'm at, but now I realize that this may be my home place for the rest of my days. I mean, I don't know. Depends on what God has in mind for me, but right now, I'm content with being here, and I'm content with finding my ancestors' artifacts. So guys, thank you from Deep South Homestead.